Jae-won stands in his mother's Manhattan penthouse at dawn, the weight of Sojin's recording burning like fire in his pocket. Grace sits behind her mahogany desk, reviewing quarterly reports as if this were any ordinary morning, as if her son hasn't just discovered the truth that will reshape their family forever. Before we dive in, beautiful people, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way you can support us as we continue delivering captivating stories that'll keep you hooked every single day. "Mother," he says quietly, his voice carrying a steel she's never heard before. "We need to talk about Ji-hoon." Grace doesn't look up from her papers. "Your brother's death was a tragedy that this family has mourned appropriately. There's nothing more to discuss." "Then let me be more specific. We need to talk about the phone call you had with Ji-hoon the night he died. The one where you threatened to destroy him financially, socially, and personally if he chose love over family duty." Now she raises her eyes, and the calculation in them is sharper than ever. "I see you've been speaking with Sojin. I assume she's shared her version of events, conveniently painting herself as the innocent victim." She shared Ji-hoon's version. Jae-won places the digital recorder on her desk. The small device sits between them like a loaded weapon. His actual voice, "Mother. Every word you said to him. Every threat you made. Every choice you took away from him until suicide seemed like his only escape." Grace stares at the recorder, her composed mask slipping for just a moment before she reconstructs it with visible effort. "That recording proves nothing except that I was trying to save my son from making a catastrophic mistake. That recording proves you murdered him." Jae-won's voice breaks on the words. "Not with your hands, but with your words. You trapped him so completely between love and loyalty that death became his only way out. And then you paid Sojin to disappear so no one would ever know the truth. I protected this family." Grace rises from her chair, every inch the corporate warrior she's been for 3 decades. "I protected you from a scandal that would have destroyed Park Global, put 50,000 people out of work, and ruined everything your father and I built. Ji-hoon made his choice, Jae-won. A selfish, reckless choice that I tried desperately to prevent. He made the only choice you left him," Jae-won says quietly. "And now you're trying to do the same thing to me, isolating me from destiny, making our love seem like a threat, using fear and manipulation to control my life the way you controlled Ji-hoon's." Grace moves to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, her reflection in the glass looking suddenly older, worn down by years of carrying secrets alone. "Do you know what it cost me to build this empire?" she asks, her voice softer now. "I gave up the man I loved to marry your father because it was a strategic alliance. I spent 30 years in a loveless marriage, playing the perfect corporate wife, sacrificing every personal desire for the good of this family. And when Ji-hoon wanted to throw it all away for a girl who couldn't contribute to our legacy, yes, I fought him. Because I knew what that choice would cost, not just him, but everyone who depends on Park Global. So you made him pay the ultimate price instead," Jae-won says. "You'd rather have a dead son than a happy one who disappointed your expectations." "That's not fair." Grace turns to face him, and for the first time he sees genuine pain in her eyes. "I never wanted Ji-hoon to die. I wanted him to choose responsibility over infatuation. I wanted him to be strong enough to make the difficult decision. The decision you made," Jae-won realizes. "You wanted him to give up love the way you did. To sacrifice his happiness for family legacy, just like you sacrificed yours. But Ji-hoon wasn't you, Mother. He couldn't live with that choice, so he made a different one." The accusation hangs between them, raw and devastating. Grace has spent 8 years convincing herself that Ji-hoon's death was a tragic accident, that her role was protective rather than destructive. But hearing her surviving son voice the truth she's been denying forces her to confront what she's always known but never admitted. She broke Ji-hoon. And now she's trying to break Jae-won too, because living with the guilt of one son's death is somehow easier than watching another son choose love over legacy. "What are you going to do with that recording?" Grace asks finally, her voice carefully controlled. "That depends on what you do next," Jae-won says. "I'm going to be with Destiny, Mother. Publicly, permanently, without apology or compromise." The question is whether you can accept that reality, or whether you're going to force me to choose the way you forced Jihoon. And if I can't accept it, then I release everything. The recording, Sojin's testimony, the medical records about her pregnancy, the money transfers, all of it. The world will know exactly what you did to Jihoon, and Park Global will face the scandal you've spent 8 years trying to prevent. Grace processes this ultimatum with a strategic mind that has guided her for decades. Fighting will destroy her reputation, potentially damage the company, and certainly cost her any remaining relationship with Jae-won. But surrendering means admitting failure, acknowledging that love might actually be worth the risks she's spent her life avoiding. You would really destroy everything we've built over a woman you've known for less than a week? She asks. I would really choose life over legacy, Jae-won corrects. Something Jihoon tried to do, and you prevented. I won't make the same mistake he did, mother. I won't let your fear control my choices. And I won't let guilt over Jihoon's death trap me into the same isolation that killed him. The finality in his voice tells Grace that this isn't negotiable. Her surviving son is drawing a line, and she must choose which side of it she wants to stand on. If I accept this, she says slowly, if I allow your relationship with Ms. Crawford to continue without interference, what happens to Sojin? What happens to the recording? Sojin gets the support she should have received 8 years ago, therapy, legal protection, and public acknowledgement of what she survived. The recording stays sealed as long as you keep your word. But if you threaten Destiny again, if anyone connected to her has another convenient accident, if you try any of the tactics you've perfected over the years, then everything becomes public. You're blackmailing your own mother, Grace observes, though there's something almost like respect in her tone. I'm protecting the woman I love from the woman who killed my brother, Jae-won corrects. There's a difference. They stare at each other across the office that has been the center of Grace's power for decades, two people who love each other but define love in completely incompatible ways. I need time, Grace says finally. Time to think, to process, to determine how this affects Park Global's future. You have 24 hours, Jae-won replies. After that, Destiny and I are going public with our relationship regardless of your decision. And Sojin will make her own choice about whether to remain silent or tell her story. He leaves his mother standing alone in her perfectly appointed penthouse, surrounded by the symbols of success that have been her consolation for every personal sacrifice. For the first time in 30 years, Grace Park faces a battle she cannot win through strategy or intimidation. Her son is stronger than Jihoon was, more prepared to survive her tactics. And the woman he loves is more formidable than Sojin, forged by her own struggles into someone who won't be easily broken or bought. Grace has 24 hours to decide whether to be a mother or a matriarch, whether to choose love or legacy, whether to learn from Jihoon's death or repeat the mistakes that caused it. Some decisions remake entire families. And this one will determine whether the Park family destroys itself from within or finds a way to evolve. At Mount Sinai Hospital, Marcus is sitting up in bed when Destiny, Jae-won, and Minji arrive with Sojin. His face is bruised and bandaged, but his eyes are sharp and alert. You look terrible, Destiny says, relief flooding her voice as she hugs him carefully. You should see the truck, Marcus replies with a weak smile. Then his expression becomes serious. Tell me you got the recording. We got everything, Jae-won confirms, pulling up a chair. Sojin has been incredibly brave. Sojin bows slightly to Marcus. I am sorry you were hurt because of my story. I should have spoken sooner. Don't apologize for surviving, Marcus says firmly. Apologize for nothing. What happened to you? What Grace Park did? That's on her, not you. Minji spreads documents across the hospital tray table. We've prepared a comprehensive package for release if necessary. The recording, medical records, financial transfers, witness statements from the nurse who treated Sojin, and affidavits from journalists who cover the original accident. It's enough to withstand any legal challenge Grace might mount. But we're giving her a choice first, Destiny explains. Accept Jae-won's relationship with me, support Sojin properly, and the evidence stays sealed. Or fight us, and everything becomes public. Marcus considers this strategy. You're gambling that Grace values her reputation more than her control. I'm gambling that she loves me more than she loves power, Jae-won says quietly. It's possible I'm wrong. Ji-hoon certainly thought she'd choose differently. But I have to give her the chance to prove she learned something from losing one son. And if she doesn't take it? Marcus asks. Then we release everything and deal with the consequences, Destiny says. The media storm, the legal battles, the damage to Park Global. All of it becomes public, and Grace faces accountability for what she did. Sojin speaks up, her voice stronger than before. I've been silent for 8 years because I was afraid and because I thought staying quiet would honor Ji-hoon's memory. But I realize now that the best way to honor him is to tell the truth about what killed him. Not an accident, not reckless driving, but a mother's love twisted into something toxic and destructive. Grace Park made her choices, Marcus agrees. Now she gets to live with them or change them. Either way, the truth exists now. It can't be erased again. They spend the next hour refining their strategy, determining which media outlets to contact if release becomes necessary, preparing Sojin for the potential publicity storm, and ensuring that everyone involved has legal protection and psychological support. It's exhausting, complicated work. But it's also necessary. The labor of transforming private tragedy into public testimony, of turning grief into advocacy, of ensuring that Ji-hoon's death means something beyond the sanitized corporate memorial Grace erected. As they're preparing to leave, Marcus catches Destiny's hand. Are you sure about this? Once you commit to J1 publicly, there's no going back. Grace's acceptance or not, you'll be under scrutiny for the rest of your life. I'm sure, Destiny says without hesitation. I spent 3 years after Cameron's betrayal convinced that love wasn't worth the risk. That protecting myself was more important than opening my heart. But J1 changed that. He's worth the risk, worth the scrutiny, worth fighting Grace Park and the entire world if necessary. Then I'm with you, Marcus says. Whatever happens, whatever Grace decides, you don't fight this battle alone. None of us do, Sojin adds quietly. We fight together, for Ji-hoon's memory and for everyone trapped between duty and desire. They leave the hospital as the sun sets over Manhattan, for people bound together by tragedy and determination, preparing for a confrontation that will either free them all or destroy them. The next 24 hours will determine which. Grace spends the night alone in her penthouse, surrounded by photographs that chronicle 30 years of corporate success and personal sacrifice. Pictures of business deals signed, buildings constructed, markets dominated. But also pictures of her sons, young and hopeful, before tragedy and expectation reshaped their lives. She lingers on a photo of Ji-hoon at 20, laughing at something off-camera, his whole life ahead of him. He looks so much like his father in that moment, the man she married for strategy rather than love. The man who gave her 2 sons and a business empire, but never her heart. That belonged to someone else, a young architect with calloused hands and kind eyes who believed buildings should serve people rather than profit. The man in the photograph on her desk, the one she touches like a talisman when decisions become impossible. She'd given him up for Park Global. Married well, strategically, dutifully. Built an empire on the foundation of personal sacrifice. And she'd expected her sons to do the same, to understand that love was a luxury their family couldn't afford. But Ji-hoon had refused to make that sacrifice. He'd chosen love over legacy, and it had destroyed him. Or more accurately, Grace's response to his choice had destroyed him. She can admit that now, alone in the dark, with Jae-won's ultimatum echoing in her mind. She'd driven Ji-hoon to suicide by making love and family seem mutually exclusive, by threatening to take away everything except the one thing he wanted most. And now Jae-won is following the same path, choosing Destiny Crawford despite every obstacle Grace has created. The only difference is that Jae-won is stronger, more prepared to survive without her approval. Which means Grace has a choice. She can fight and lose both her sons, one to death and one to permanent estrangement. Or she can surrender control and discover whether love might actually strengthen rather than threaten the family she's spent her life protecting. It's the hardest decision she's ever faced, harder than any business negotiation or corporate battle. Because it requires admitting she was wrong, that her methods were destructive, that love might be worth the risks she's spent decades avoiding. At 3 in the morning, Grace makes 2 phone calls. The first is to her head of legal, instructing him to prepare documents that will provide Sojin with lifetime financial support, legal protection, and a formal apology from the Park family. The second is to Jae-won. "I accept your terms," she says without preamble when he answers, clearly awakened from sleep. "You can be with Ms. Crawford." Sojin will receive the support she deserves. The recording stays sealed. The silence on the other end is so long that Grace wonders if he's hung up. "Why?" Jae-won finally asks. "Why now, after everything?" "Because I can't lose another son," Grace admits, her voice breaking on the words. "I spent 8 years convincing myself that Ji-hoon's death was his choice, his failure, his weakness. But hearing you tonight, I realized the truth I've been avoiding. I killed him, Jae-won. Not directly, but effectively. And I can't do that again. I won't, Mother." Jae-won's voice is thick with emotion. "I don't expect forgiveness," Grace continues. "I don't expect you to forget what I did to Ji-hoon, or what I tried to do to your relationship with Destiny. But I'm asking for the chance to be better, to be the mother Ji-hoon needed, and I failed to be." "It's not forgiveness," Jae-won says carefully. "Not yet. But it's a beginning. And beginnings are what we need right now." They talk for another hour, carefully navigating the minefield of their relationship, establishing boundaries and expectations. Grace will accept Destiny publicly, support their relationship without interference, and work with Sojin to provide proper acknowledgement of Ji-hoon's story. In return, the recording stays sealed, and the Park family has a chance to heal rather than destroy itself. It's not perfect reconciliation. The wounds are too deep, the trust too damaged for immediate repair. But it's a foundation, fragile and uncertain, but real. When Grace finally disconnects, she looks again at the photograph of the architect she loved and gave up. "I chose duty over you," she whispers to the image. "And I lost myself in the process. But maybe, just maybe, I can help my son make a different choice." Some redemption comes too late, but some arrives just in time to prevent new tragedies. Grace Park is about to discover which kind hers will be. 3 months later, Seoul's Park Global Headquarters hosts an event unlike any in the company's 50-year history. The rooftop terrace has been transformed into a space for healing rather than corporate celebration, a public memorial service for Han Ji-hoon that honors the truth of who he was rather than the sanitized version Grace had constructed. Sojin stands at the center, no longer hiding behind assumed names or manufactured fear. She's written a statement about Ji-hoon that will be read in both Korean and English, a testament to their love and the child they lost. "Ji-hoon Park was not a perfect man," she begins, her voice steady despite the cameras recording every word. "But he was a brave one. He chose love when it would have been easier to choose duty. He chose truth when it would have been safer to choose silence. And he chose to honor the child we created together, even when his family asked him to deny that child's existence." The assembled crowd includes Park Global board members, Korean media, international press, and representatives from organizations that support families dealing with suicide. Grace has insisted on transparency, on facing the consequences of her actions publicly rather than hiding behind corporate lawyers and publicity spin. Destiny stands beside Jae-won, their hands intertwined, watching Grace's face as Sojin speaks. The older woman's composure is fragile, tears tracking down her cheeks despite her attempts to maintain dignity. This is harder than any business presentation Grace has ever given, this public acknowledgement of failure and loss. But it's also necessary. The first step in transforming the Park family from a corporation that consumes its members into something resembling an actual family. Mrs. Grace Park has asked me to share that she takes full responsibility for the circumstances that led to Ji-hoon's death. Sojin continues, reading from prepared remarks that Grace helped write. She acknowledges that her attempts to control his choices, her threats to remove financial and family support, and her refusal to accept his love for me created an impossible situation that contributed to his decision to end his life. The words cost Grace visibly. She's admitting fault in front of the business community that has been her power base for 3 decades, revealing weakness to people who respect only strength. But she's also modeling accountability, showing that even the most powerful families must face the consequences of their choices. Minji presents the new Ji-hoon Park Memorial Foundation, funded by Grace and dedicated to supporting young people trapped between family expectations and personal identity. The foundation will provide counseling, financial assistance, and legal support to those facing pressure to abandon relationships, careers, or life choices due to family disapproval. Ji-hoon's death was a tragedy, Grace says when it's her turn to speak, her English careful and clear. But it doesn't have to be meaningless. If we can help even one family avoid the mistakes I made, if we can save even one young person from feeling as trapped as my son felt, then perhaps his death can create life for others. She looks directly at Jae-won and Destiny. My surviving son has taught me that love doesn't weaken family bonds, it strengthens them. That choosing personal happiness doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. And that the greatest legacy we can leave is not corporate success, but the freedom for future generations to choose their own paths. The speech is met with respectful applause, but also with visible skepticism from some board members. Grace Park's transformation from corporate warrior to advocate for love over duty seems sudden, potentially strategic rather than sincere. But Jae-won knows the truth. He's seen his mother struggle over the past 3 months, wrestling with guilt over Ji-hoon, fear about losing control, and genuine desire to rebuild their relationship. The change is real, even if it's incomplete. After the ceremony, there's a private reception where Seo-jin meets Park Global's senior leadership. Grace introduces her not as the woman who survived Ji-hoon's death, but as the mother of Grace's first grandchild, acknowledging publicly what she spent 8 years denying. I'm sorry, Grace says to Seo-jin during a quiet moment, away from cameras and curious observers. I'm sorry I made you invisible. I'm sorry I paid you to hide your grief. I'm sorry I valued corporate reputation over human life. If I could change what happened, if I could bring Ji-hoon and your baby back, I would give everything I own. I know, Seo-jin replies simply. But we can't change the past. We can only choose what we do with the future. It's forgiveness of a kind, not complete absolution, but acknowledgement that they're both trying to move forward from tragedy rather than remaining trapped in it. Marcus, fully recovered from his injuries, has documented the entire journey in a series of articles that will run in major publications on both sides of the Pacific. The story of Ji-hoon Park, the love that killed him, and the family working to ensure his death creates change rather than just grief. This is going to be controversial, he warns Destiny as they watch the reception unfold. Some people will accuse Grace of using Ji-hoon's death for publicity. Others will say you and Jae-won are exploiting tragedy for your relationship. Let them say it, Destiny replies. We know the truth. Ji-hoon deserves to be remembered as he really was, not as the sanitized version Grace created. And other families deserve to know that love doesn't have to be a choice between personal happiness and family loyalty. As evening falls over Seoul, the rooftop terrace empties slowly. But Destiny, Jae-won, Grace, and Seo-jin remain, standing together in the space where Ji-hoon's memory has finally been honored properly. He would have liked this, Jae-won says quietly, looking at the memorial plaque that bears his brother's real story. Not the tragedy, but the truth. Ji-hoon always believed that honesty was more important than appearances. He was braver than I gave him credit for, Grace admits. And I was more afraid than I admitted to myself. Afraid that love would destroy what I'd built, when really, the lack of love was what destroyed us. They stand in silence for a moment, for people bound together by tragedy, working to transform grief into healing. What happens now? Seo-jin asks. After the publicity fades and the foundation is established, what happens to us? We keep choosing, Destiny says. Keep choosing truth over convenience, love over control, healing over hiding. It's not a one-time decision, it's a daily practice. And some days will be harder than others, Grace acknowledges. I won't pretend I'm completely comfortable with how much my life has changed. But I'm learning that discomfort is better than the alternative I've been living with for 8 years. As they prepare to leave, Jae-won pulls out a small velvet box. Inside is the vintage ring his great-grandmother wore, the woman who started Park Global alongside her husband when they had nothing but hope and determination. Destiny Crawford, he says, taking her hand, I know we've only known each other for 3 months. I know we've survived more drama than most couples face in years. But I also know that you're the person I want beside me for whatever comes next. Will you marry me? The question hangs in the soul air, witnessed by his mother, by Sojin, by the memory of Ji-hoon that finally rests at peace. Destiny looks at the ring, at Jae-won, at the family they're building from the wreckage of tragedy. 3 months ago, she was alone, successful but isolated, convinced that protecting herself was more important than risking connection. Now she's standing on a rooftop in Seoul, surrounded by people who've become family through shared struggle, being offered a future that terrifies and exhilarates her in equal measure. Yes, she says simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Grace steps forward and embraces them both, tears streaming freely now. Thank you, she whispers. Thank you for not giving up on me, for not letting me destroy another son's happiness, for showing me that redemption is possible even after unforgivable mistakes. Sojin adds her own embrace, and for a moment, they're all connected, past and present and future, grief and hope and love intertwined in ways that make them stronger rather than weaker. To Ji-hoon, Jae-won says quietly, who chose love even when it cost him everything. May we honor his memory by choosing just as bravely. To Ji-hoon, they echo. And in the Seoul twilight, with the city spreading below them like promises and possibilities, the Park family takes its first real steps toward becoming whole. 1 year later, Destiny and Jae-won marry in a ceremony that blends Korean and American traditions, honoring both their heritages. Grace walks Jae-won down the aisle, a reversal of tradition that symbolizes their rebuilt relationship. Sojin serves as one of Destiny's attendants, no longer hidden but celebrated as part of their family story. Marcus officiates, having been ordained specifically for this purpose. His opening words acknowledge the journey they've all traveled. We gather today not just to witness a marriage, but to celebrate the courage it takes to choose love despite every obstacle. Destiny and Jae-won's relationship was forged in fire, tested by family expectations, media scrutiny, and the weight of tragedy. That they're standing here today is a testament to their commitment not just to each other, but to building a future where love and family can coexist. The vows they exchange are personal, honest, and profound. Destiny promises to honor Jae-won's heritage while maintaining her own identity, to support his family responsibilities while pursuing her artistic dreams, to choose him daily even when choosing becomes difficult. Jae-won promises to protect their love without isolating it, to learn from his family's mistakes while honoring their legacy, to build a partnership based on equality rather than obligation. When they're pronounced married, the celebration that follows is joyous, but also meaningful. Every detail has been chosen to reflect their values. Flowers from businesses owned by immigrant families, catering by Korean and African American restaurants, decorations created by artists who faced their own struggles with family acceptance. Grace gives a toast that acknowledges how much she's changed. A year ago, I would have fought this marriage with every resource at my disposal. I would have seen it as a threat to everything I'd built. But my sons taught me, both of them, that love is not the enemy of legacy.
Fear is. Control is.
The refusal to let the people we love make their own choices, that's what destroys families. Not love. Never love. The applause is genuine, recognizing the difficulty of Grace's transformation and the authenticity of her growth. Sojin's toast is shorter, but equally moving. Ji-hoon believed that love was worth any sacrifice. He was right, but he learned it from the wrong teacher. Love shouldn't require sacrificing everything else you value. Love should expand your world, not force you to choose between it and your family. Thank you, Destiny and J1, for proving that both are possible. As the evening progresses, Destiny finds herself on the terrace, looking out over the city, where her life has been transformed so dramatically. Marcus joins her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. Thinking about how far you've come, he asks. Thinking about how lucky I am, Destiny corrects. A year ago, I was at that museum gala planning to sketch sculptures and leave early. Instead, I met a man who changed everything, fought a battle I never expected to fight, and helped transform a family's tragedy into something that might actually help others. The foundation is already making a difference, Marcus confirms. We've received over 500 applications for support. Young people trapped between family expectations and personal happiness, all of them finding hope because Ji-hoon's story was told truthfully. That's his real legacy, Destiny says. Not the corporate memorial Grace originally built, but the lives that change because people know they're not alone in feeling trapped between duty and desire. Jae-won joins them, wrapping his arms around Destiny from behind. Are you happy? He asks. Ridiculously happy, she admits. So happy it still feels dangerous, like I should be preparing for disaster. What if there is no disaster? Jae-won suggests. What if this is just what love looks like when both people are ready for it, when both families support it, when tragedy becomes catalyst for growth rather than excuse for control? Then I guess we just keep living it, Destiny says. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one brave decision at a time. They stand together, 3 friends who've become family, watching the celebration continue inside. The room is full of people who've learned that love doesn't weaken us. Isolation does. That choosing happiness doesn't mean abandoning responsibility, it means redefining it. That families can evolve, even when evolution feels impossible. Grace appears in the doorway, gesturing for them to come back inside. There's a surprise, she says, smiling in a way that suggests genuine joy rather than strategic calculation. The surprise is a video message from the nurse who'd kept Sojin's medical records, the woman who disappeared a year ago out of fear of Grace's retaliation. She's safe now, working at a hospital in Seattle, and her message is simple but profound. Thank you for making it safe to tell the truth. Thank you for proving that powerful families can be held accountable. And thank you for showing that love is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. You've changed more lives than you know. As the video ends, there's not a dry eye in the room. Even Grace is crying openly, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what she almost destroyed and what she's helped rebuild. The party continues late into the night, a celebration not just of marriage, but of transformation, of families choosing growth over control, of love proving stronger than fear. And when Destiny and Jae-won finally leave for their honeymoon, they carry with them not just the joy of new marriage, but the knowledge that their love story has become something larger than themselves. A testament to courage, a challenge to tradition, and proof that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories. 3 years later, Destiny and Jae-won welcome their first child, a daughter they name Hope Ji-hoon Park Crawford. Grace holds her granddaughter with tears streaming down her face, finally understanding what she tried to deny Sojin 8 years earlier. This child, this beautiful blend of cultures and families, represents everything Grace feared and everything she's learned to embrace. Hope won't have to choose between Korean and American identity, between family expectations and personal dreams, between duty and desire. She'll be raised knowing that all of it can coexist, that love expands rather than limits, that the bravest choice is often the most authentic one. Ji-hoon would have loved her, Grace whispers, touching the baby's tiny fingers. He did love her, Jae-won corrects gently. He loved the possibility of her, the future she represents. This is what he and Sojin wanted, a family built on love rather than obligation. Sojin visits often, no longer a ghost haunting the edges of the Park family, but an honored member of it. She's become an advocate for others who've lost pregnancies due to family pressure, turning her tragedy into purpose, her pain into healing for others. Marcus has married too, to Minji, in a wedding that surprised no one who'd watched them work together over the past 3 years. They divide their time between New York and Seoul, building bridges between cultures and families, proving that love transcends every boundary we construct. And Grace, improbably, has become a speaker on corporate responsibility and family dynamics, using her platform to advocate for policies that support work-life balance, parental leave, and mental health resources for young professionals facing family pressure. "I spent 30 years believing that love was a luxury we couldn't afford," she tells audiences. "I was wrong. Love is the necessity we can't afford to live without. Everything else, the money, the power, the corporate success, it means nothing if the people we love feel trapped rather than supported." It's a message that would have seemed impossible 4 years ago, when Grace was fighting destiny and Jaewon's relationship with every resource at her disposal. But tragedy and truth have transformed her, not into a perfect person, but into a better one. On the anniversary of Ji-hoon's death, they gather at his memorial, no longer a place of hidden shame, but a space of honest remembrance. So-jin places flowers, Grace reads a letter she's written to her lost son, and Jaewon shares memories that honor who Ji-hoon really was rather than who the family wanted him to be. "You were brave," Jaewon says to his brother's memory. "Braver than I gave you credit for. You chose love when it cost you everything, and in losing you, we learned what you tried to teach us. That love is always worth the risk. That authenticity is more important than appearances. That families who demand we sacrifice ourselves aren't worth preserving." He looks at Grace, at So-jin, at Destiny holding their daughter. But families who grow with us, who learn from mistakes, who choose courage over control, those families are worth fighting for. "Thank you for teaching us that, Ji-hoon. Even in death, you made us better." As the sun sets over the memorial, they stand together, no longer broken by tragedy, but strengthened by it, no longer isolated by secrets, but connected by truth. The Park family has been transformed, not into perfection, but into authenticity, not into a corporation, but into a true family. And the love story that began at a museum gala in Manhattan has become a legacy that will shape generations. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose love, even when it costs us everything, even when it challenges everything we thought we knew, even when it forces us to become better than we ever imagined we could be. That's the real power of love. Not that it solves all problems, but that it makes us brave enough to face them. And in facing them together, we discover that we were never meant to choose between love and family, between personal happiness and responsibility, between authentic selves and acceptable ones. We were always meant to be whole. Love simply gives us the courage to claim that wholeness. As Destiny and Jaewon walk away from the memorial, their daughter sleeping peacefully against Jaewon's shoulder, Grace calls out to them. "Thank you," she says simply, "for not giving up on me, for not letting me destroy another chance at happiness, for teaching me that it's never too late to change." "Thank you for being willing to learn," Destiny replies. Not every parent would have the courage to admit they were wrong and work to be better. "I didn't have courage," Grace corrects. "I had desperation. The fear of losing Jaewon the way I lost Ji-hoon. But somewhere in that desperation, I found something more valuable. The understanding that control isn't love.
Support is.
Acceptance is. The willingness to let the people we love make their own choices, even when those choices terrify us. It's the final lesson, the one that completes Grace's transformation from corporate warrior to genuine mother. Not perfect, never perfect, but present in a way she never managed to be when her sons needed her most. "Ji-hoon would forgive you," Jaewon says quietly. "He'd be angry, hurt, disappointed, but he'd forgive you. Because that's who he was, someone who believed in second chances and new beginnings." "I hope you're right," Grace replies. "I hope somewhere, somehow, he knows that I finally understand what he was trying to tell me. That love isn't weakness. That choosing happiness isn't selfish. That the families worth preserving are the ones that evolve." So-jin places a hand on Grace's shoulder. "He knows," she says with surprising certainty. I feel it sometimes, especially when I'm working with families through the foundation. Ji-hoon's presence, his hope that something good would come from our tragedy. We're living that hope now. All of us. As they leave the memorial together, the Seoul skyline glitters with evening lights, a city that's witnessed both their darkest moments and their greatest transformations. The Park family is not what it was. It's something entirely new, forged in the fire of loss and tempered by the courage to change. Marcus and Minji are waiting at a nearby restaurant, having prepared a private dinner for the family. It's become their tradition, gathering on Ji-hoon's anniversary not to mourn but to celebrate the life he wanted and the changes his death created. To Ji-hoon, Marcus raises his glass when they're all seated. Who taught us that love is always worth the risk, even when the risk is everything. To Ji-hoon, they echo, voices blending in harmony. The dinner is warm, intimate, filled with laughter and stories that honor Ji-hoon's memory without being consumed by grief. They talk about Hope's first words, about the Foundation's latest success stories, about the documentary that's been nominated for awards and sparked conversations about family pressure in cultures around the world. You know what the most common message we receive is? Sojin shares, scrolling through her phone. Young people saying, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. The isolation, the fear, the belief that choosing themselves means losing their families. Just knowing they're not alone changes everything for them. That's Ji-hoon's real memorial, Destiny observes. Not the granite walls or the foundation building, but the lives that change because his story was told truthfully. Every person who finds courage because they heard about his struggle, that's him living on. Grace nods slowly, accepting this truth. For years, she'd wanted Ji-hoon remembered as a perfect son who died tragically. Now she understands that the imperfect truth, the messy reality of his struggle and her failure, has more power to create change than any sanitized corporate narrative. I received a letter last week, Grace says quietly, from a mother in Tokyo whose son was contemplating suicide because she'd given him an ultimatum about his relationship. She saw the documentary, heard our story, and chose differently. She chose her son over her expectations. He's alive because we told the truth about Ji-hoon. The weight of that statement settles over the table. One life saved. Maybe more that they'll never know about. All because they chose honesty over appearances, truth over reputation, healing over hiding. That's why it was worth it, Jae-won says. The pain of exposing our family's secrets, the difficulty of transformation, the discomfort of growth. If even one family avoids what we went through, it's worth everything. As dinner winds down and they prepare to part ways, Grace pulls Destiny aside for a private conversation. I never properly apologized to you, she begins. For the investigation, the threats, the way I tried to manipulate you into leaving Jae-won. I was terrified of losing another son, but that doesn't excuse how I treated you. You were protecting your family the only way you knew how, Destiny replies. It was the wrong way, but I understand why you did it. Fear makes us all capable of things we'd never do otherwise. You're more gracious than I deserve, Grace says. But I want you to know that I see you now. Not as a threat to my family, but as the person who saved it. You could have walked away when things got difficult. You could have chosen your safety over Jae-won's happiness. But you stayed, and you fought, and you made us all better by refusing to accept our worst behaviors. I stayed because he was worth it, Destiny says simply. And because love isn't just about the easy moments. It's about choosing each other even when choosing is hard. Grace embraces her daughter-in-law, and in that moment, both women feel the connection that comes from shared struggle and mutual respect. They'll never have the easy relationship of mothers and daughters who've never been adversaries. But they have something perhaps more valuable, a bond forged through conflict and strengthened by the choice to move forward together. Thank you for loving my son, Grace whispers. Thank you for being strong enough to fight for him when I was trying to keep you apart. Thank you for learning to let him go, Destiny replies. And for discovering that letting go sometimes means holding on in a different way. When they rejoin the others, Hope is awake and fussy, reaching for her mother with tiny, insistent hands. Destiny takes her daughter, settling her against her shoulder, and the baby immediately calms. She has your strength, Grace observes. And Jaewon's determination. She's going to change the world. Or maybe just live in it authentically, Jaewon suggests. Maybe that's enough, raising a daughter who knows she doesn't have to choose between who she is and who her family expects her to be. That would have been enough for Ji-hoon, So-jin says softly. Just the freedom to be himself without apology or compromise. We couldn't give him that, but we can give it to Hope and to every child who comes after. As they leave the restaurant and step into the Seoul night, the city spreads before them like a promise. Somewhere in this sprawling metropolis, families are gathering, young people are choosing, parents are learning that control isn't love and that the tightest grip often causes the most damage. The Park family story is out there now, circulating through media and conversations, inspiring some and challenging others. Not everyone will learn from it. Not every family will choose growth over tradition, love over expectation, authenticity over appearance. But some will. And for those families, for those young people who find courage in Ji-hoon's story and hope in the Park family's transformation, everything that happened will have meaning. 5 years after that museum gala, Destiny stands in her New York studio, working on her latest installation. It's called Between Worlds, and it explores the space where cultures meet, where families evolve, where love challenges tradition and creates something entirely new. The piece incorporates elements from both her American and Korean experiences, abstract forms that suggest without defining, spaces that invite viewers to find their own meaning. It's her most personal work yet, and also her most universal. Jaewon arrives with Hope, who's now 3 and speaking a beautiful mixture of English and Korean, often in the same sentence. Their daughter has her mother's artistic sensibility and her father's strategic mind, a combination that promises either brilliance or chaos or both. Grandma Grace sent a package, Jaewon announces, holding up a box covered in Korean stamps. Inside are traditional children's books, beautifully illustrated, alongside contemporary American picture books about diverse families. She's trying, Destiny acknowledges with a smile. Still can't fully let go of wanting to shape Hope's identity, but at least now she's including multiple perspectives instead of insisting on just one. Progress, not perfection, Jaewon agrees, using the phrase that's become their family motto. That's all any of us can aim for. Marcus calls with news that the foundation has opened its 5th international office, this one in London, expanding their reach to support young people throughout Europe who face similar family pressures around relationships, career choices, and identity. We're getting requests from everywhere, Marcus reports. Brazil, South Africa, India, Australia. Turns out family pressure and the struggle between tradition and authenticity is pretty universal. Ji-hoon's legacy keeps growing, Destiny muses. He'd be amazed that his story has reached so far. Or maybe he wouldn't, Jaewon suggests. Maybe he always knew that love stories, real ones with all their complexity and pain, have the power to change the world. He just didn't live long enough to see it happen. That evening, as they put Hope to bed, their daughter asks about the photos on her bedroom wall. Pictures of Ji-hoon, young and smiling, alongside images of the whole family, past and present woven together. Tell me about Uncle Ji-hoon, Hope requests as she does most nights. And Jaewon tells the story, not the sanitized version Grace once preferred, but the truth. About a young man who fell in love, who chose authentically even when it cost him everything, who died too soon but whose death taught his family what his life couldn't. He was brave, Hope concludes as she always does. The bravest, Jaewon confirms. And because of his bravery, you get to live differently. You get to choose who you love, what you believe, who you become, without fear that your family will abandon you for being honest. That's the best gift, Hope says with the wisdom of a child who doesn't yet understand how rare such freedom is. It is, Destiny agrees, kissing her daughter goodnight. The very best gift. Later, as they sit on their terrace overlooking the city where their story began, Destiny and Jaewon reflect on the journey that brought them here. Do you ever regret it? Jae-won asks. The media attention, the family drama, the investigation into your past, all of it? Never, Destiny answers without hesitation. Because all of that difficulty brought us here. To this life, this family, this love that's strong enough to survive anything because it's been tested by everything. We're lucky, Jae-won muses. So many people don't get second chances. So many families never learn to evolve. So many love stories end before they really begin. We're not just lucky, Destiny corrects. We're brave. We chose each other when choosing was hard. We fought for us when giving up would have been easier. And we're still choosing, every single day, to build something better than what came before. A text arrives from Grace, sent to their family group chat. It's a photo of her at a speaking engagement, the auditorium packed with young people listening to her talk about family expectations and the courage to choose authentically. The message reads, "Spoke to 500 university students today about Ji-hoon and the importance of families supporting rather than controlling their children's choices." Several came up afterward to say they're going to have honest conversations with their parents. Maybe we're changing more than we know. She really has transformed, Destiny observes. Sometimes I forget how much she's changed. Sometimes I think she forgets too, Jae-won replies. And then something happens that reminds her why she chose to be different. That's the work of growth, isn't it? Constantly recommitting to being better than we were. They sit in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker like stars, each one representing a life, a story, a choice between fear and courage, control and love, tradition and transformation. Somewhere out there, another young person is facing an impossible choice. Another family is learning to evolve. Another love story is beginning, uncertain whether it will survive the pressures that threaten to destroy it. The Park family story offers them hope. Not a promise that everything will be easy, but evidence that love can survive even the most formidable opposition when people are brave enough to fight for it. That's the power of telling the truth. That's the magic of choosing authenticity over appearances. That's the legacy that Ji-hoon left behind and that his family has worked to honor. One love story, told honestly, can change countless others. One family, brave enough to transform, can inspire generations. One choice, made with courage rather than fear, can reshape entire worlds. As Destiny and Jae-won prepare for bed, they pass Hope's room and pause to watch their daughter sleep. She's surrounded by symbols of both her cultures, Korean and American, traditional and modern, all coexisting in harmony. This is what Ji-hoon wanted, Jae-won whispers. A world where love creates families rather than families limiting love. Where children like Hope grow up knowing they're whole exactly as they are. We built it for him, Destiny replies. And for us. And for everyone who comes after. They close the door quietly, leaving their daughter to dreams that will never be limited by fear or constrained by others' expectations. And in the soul dawn, Grace wakes and looks at the photo on her desk, no longer the picture of the architect she loved and lost, but a new photo of her entire family, Hope included, all of them smiling at a recent gathering. She touches the glass gently, no longer mourning what she sacrificed, but celebrating what she's gained by learning to let go. "I'm trying, Ji-hoon," she whispers to her lost son. "I'm trying to be the mother you needed, even though it's too late for you. I'm trying to build the family you deserved, even though you're not here to see it. I'm trying to make your death mean something more than just my failure." And maybe, in the quiet of that soul mourning, she feels what Sojin feels. Ji-hoon's presence, his forgiveness, his hope that love would eventually win. Because love always wins, not easily or quickly or without cost, but eventually, inevitably, when people are brave enough to choose it over everything else. The Park family chose love. And in choosing it, they changed not just their own story, but countless others. That's the power we all have, to choose courage over fear, authenticity over appearance, love over control, and in choosing, to create a world where everyone's love story has a chance to survive. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is love completely, despite every obstacle, Despite every voice saying it's impossible, despite every fear whispering that safety is better than joy. And sometimes, when we're that brave, we discover that love doesn't destroy us. It saves us. It transforms us. It makes us more than we ever imagined we could be. If this journey moved you, if Destiny and Jaewon's courage inspired you, if the Park family's transformation gave you hope that change is possible even after tragedy, share the story. Because somewhere, someone needs to hear that love is worth the risk, that families can evolve, and that choosing authentically is always braver than choosing safely. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage, challenge tradition, and prove that love, real love with all its complexity and difficulty, is always worth fighting for. Because some love stories transcend boundaries, challenge empires, and change the world. And yours might be next. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, beautiful people. See you in the next one.